going. That's not the French. We're starting here. I think it's 5. There you go.
Okay, and you guys don't do titles, right? Am I allowed to get on?
Yes, of course.
Okay, every club's different and I can't remember what's what. A very nice, technically a very nice print. Lots of texture in the whites. A really nice composition also. You've used the frame nicely. And a beautiful sky. The sky really adds to the overall image. It's nicely done, nicely printed. 13. Wow. Ice cold lemonade. Not sure what the effect is, the kind of, I want to call it like a zooming in effect right into the center. She's nice and sharp in her booth, and everything else is kind of smeared to the outside. In this carnival kind of atmosphere, it works. There's other places where it might not, but I think whatever the treatment is, whether it's the lens or the software, I think it all goes together. And all the crazy colors, it all forces you right down in to see her selling lemonade. It's an interesting shot. As far as impact goes, it's got some impact. It's not huge impact, but it's pretty good. 12. Done a nice job on the exposure. I like the long light trails, and the red ones are fine, and the yellow/white ones are not blown out. So that's nice because that happens a lot. You've been able to hold that back. The lights on the bridge are white, and that's fine. I don't expect to see detail in a street light. Composition is nice. There's not too much sky. I think you've done a pretty good job here. Lots of different colors. It's that time of night, so you don't have to have super accurate green grass and that kind of stuff. 12. The cactus in the lower right, all the way through to the mountains, it's very sharp. The light is on the contrasty side. It's a time of day thing, bright sunlight. There's an awful lot going on there, and in the small print you got to kind of squint it in to focus on any one thing. There's different buildings, lots of buildings, mountains, the whole 9 yards. It would be nicer, I think, if you had made more of an effort to isolate certain things. I don't know the situation. There could be a rail and a 50-foot drop off there. I have no idea. But if you were able to get in there, and it looks like there's a lot of subjects to shoot, it would just, I think it would clarify things a bit, and it wouldn't be so much in one thing. 11. It's printed nice, and the colors are nice. but there's a lot going on. I like the way you framed the two fishermen in the right lower dead center, with the branches and the greenery around. Even with that out of focus one on the lower left, that's a bit bothersome. Not the end of the world, but it is a bit of a distraction there. The brightness in the waterfalls behind, not the end of the world either. It just adds to it, I think. You've done a nice job softening the water also without, obviously they're moving around and they may not even know you're there. So you can't go for a 5-second exposure because they're going to move and they're going to be blurry. So you've blurred the water enough to make me and the viewer understand you know what you're doing. So I think you've done a nice job here. 13. It looks like a beautiful place. These speedboats. Yeah, there's so much detail when you look and you realize how much of the front of the boat is sticking out of the water. It's not even actually in the water. The maker's done a nice job, I think, nailing the shutter speed. So the water's implied motion, but mostly frozen. Nice background with the rooster tails kicked. But I think that's kind of a personal taste. But I think you've done a nice job here. And if you move the boat a little more to the left, you lose that that part of the. If this is over, you'd lose this, and this is a big part of the story, right here. And of course, I'm standing in front of it. You can't see it anyway. That part over there, over there. Yeah, block it all and then point to it like you can see through me. Yeah, so I think it has to be in the center the way it is. 14.
That's an honorable mention for Bob Hardick.
Butterfly list. You've got, the maker's done a nice job getting everything sharp on the subject, on the butterfly. It appears to be sharp from the whole thing, which is nice. A lot of times you're missing parts with sharpness. There's enough here you can tell what kind of butterfly it is, and also, you know, you've included enough detail, especially in the white flowers. Somebody might say, oh, maybe the white flower buds off to the side. I can't. These over here might be too bright and distracting. On the print, it looks much better. There's an awful lot in the background as far as highlights in that. I know it's like you're chasing this thing through the woods or through a field.
That's an honorable mention from Robert Miller.
Oh, that's the one that sprays the water, right?
Yeah, it's the,
Yeah, yeah.
That one
The
is-
fireboat or whatever. Okay, cool. I see pictures of it far away, but I've not seen anything close up. Generally speaking, you've captured the scene. You got nice exposure. There's no blown out highlights. The blue sky's blue. I can't help but notice in the lower left, shows up on there, a flesh-colored mark which looks like your thumb. I'm not saying it is. Don't let the air out of my tires. I'm just saying it looks like your thumb's there or something like that, or the back, somebody's ear. Whoever was standing beside you might be their ear. It's just odd that it's a flesh-colored kind of a highlight there. You got to really watch the borders on whatever you're doing. Could you have cropped that out? No, you might have been able to crop it out, but you lose also some of the story in these old buildings, right? You could probably clone it out with some of the pavement just above it. So you got to you got to watch all that stuff, right? 10.
And we're done with Prince.
Done with Prince? Okay. I'm going to shut the microphone off before I say something stupid.
mic you up
All
again?
set? Okay.
think
Yeah,
so.
thank you. Awesome.
Wherever you had it was perfect.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, about the same spot.
Yeah, actually really good.
Yeah, okay, good.
I gotta figure out placement for the camera because it's not quite. It's like off center, so you can like keystone. I mean, you get the gist of the picture.
Center come a little bit. Hold up.
No.
It's off axis, because it's off axis from the,
Especially because it's like a 24 mil or something, so it's you get the distortion. What's that? No, it'll be all right. I mean, we'll figure it out next week. Right now, I mean, this is
You might
growing pains, so.
a suggestion would be either somehow get it here, right beside this, or behind you guys and up higher and shooting. So the thing is, you got to be in line here. That's what's causing it, yeah. Yeah, well, in line here is going to be right in line with the screen, right? So if you're in line here, behind you guys in the center,
I was
shooting over heads, right?
About it when I came over, I didn't think it would be as bad as. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it's just again,
It's not the way you'd like it.
It's only the second video we've done.
Yeah, it's not the
video didn't have audio. For some reason, the audio wasn't going through the.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Through the camera.
Yeah.
So I was picking up the audio off my mic. So me and another member were back here talking about our new cameras, and you could hear it all.
Picked it all up, yeah.
You could barely hear Dave.
Oh, that's not good, yeah. You good to go?
Yeah, we got to do the 50.
Want me to get everybody to sit down? Okay. Okay, everybody.
50-50 split, $25.
Ooh, yeah. That's real money.
I'll let you call a number since you got the money.
Last three digits are 587. Right over here.
Oh,
There you go. I'll let you take care of that.
since you got the mic, can you make the announcement where we're meeting next week and at what time?
Oh, so for those who are coming out next week, so before we start back into the digital, I just want to announce for those who are signed up for next week's workshop, Chris and I and a model are coming over next Wednesday, not tomorrow, a week tomorrow.
So we're not meeting here next week.
Yeah. We're going to meet either, is it behind or in front of the museum? The Rose Garden in LaSalle Park, behind the museum.
Yeah, it's behind it.
Yeah. Delaware Park, what did I say?
Delaware Park around the
Yeah,
casino
listen.
and Rose Garden.
Yeah. So we'll meet right in the structure that's in the Rose Garden. Okay? Just like last time, we'll give you a talk about tools and how we do it and everything else. I know some of you have been to it probably already and seen us do it. For those who haven't, you guys can sit closer to the front or stay closer to the front so you can hear us. And we'll go through all what we do and the tools and everything else. Then we will move over to the other side of the playground. Basically the same spot if we can find it that we did last year. And we'll continue on from there, and we'll set up in a row or two, bring a chair or a stool, and get cozy. The closer you are together, the better your pictures will be, because you'll be less off axis, right? So it's nice to have you nice and close and tight. 2 rows is better, then it's a nice tight bunch, but whatever you're comfortable with. So, yeah.
If you have a stool, it works out well because they're usually more compact. If you
Yeah.
have a nice lounge chair that you would go to a
Feel the weather more than we will. So just keep that in mind. An extra sweatshirt or whatever.
And just so you know, they're going to be giving us all the settings and what to and how to and what not to. So all of these images are workshop related, and they are not allowed in competition or critiques.
Yeah.
If you do it on your own afterwards, that's your gig. But this event, you can't just for that.
So while I got your attention, then a quick rundown. Make sure you understand how to use your camera in manual. Make sure you can turn your autofocus off, okay? Make sure long exposure noise reduction, that's what Nikon calls it, don't know what Canon calls it. That's what Nikon calls it. Make sure it's turned off. I don't know what anybody else calls anything. So just make sure that those are the big things. Those are the problems we run across in all the clubs we do. we have issues with those things. Because a long exposure noise reduction, if you take a 30-second exposure, it takes a 30-second black one with the shutter closed before you can take another shot. We're not going to wait for you. Okay, you're going to miss stuff. So yeah, and it's nicer if you have an actual handheld or radio trigger. Using your phone to trigger, and the infrared one is hard because you got to reach around from behind, and there's probably somebody else there with the same trigger. So anyways, we'll get into more detail later, but those are the big ones, the autofocus and manual operation of your camera.
Very good. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, no problem. Well, Houston, we have a problem. Which way? There we go, so I can point, good.
You need that camera in front of the picture.
What's that?
You need that camera there? We're
Yes,
all
we're streaming.
losing out because of the camera.
So we're streaming live, so I mean, if you can maybe move to a different station.
We're good. So it's the same as the prints. It's an open,
Yeah.
no categories. Okay. Maker's done a great job accentuating the sun, whether it's through the compression of a long lens or a double exposure or a montage of some sort. Whatever you did, that's the first thing that grabs you when the image comes up. So it adds drama and impact, absolutely, for sure. Especially, it's not just a big round circle, it's cut off here with the clouds and that. It just adds more mystery, and you have depth. You have depth going through here. It all works. It's a bit messy here with the power lines and that. Generally a good exposure up in here, but it does have definitely above average impact. I know you're, be careful with this here. Whoops, I'm pointing right here. Whatever you've done there, it doesn't look like leaves anymore. Just be careful with what you're doing. It has to look recognizable fairly much when you're done. Still 13. Also, and I'm not pointing out people, if you can keep the chatter in the background to a minimum, a couple people's voices are cutting right through, and I don't want to hear it. Thank you. Really nice job on the Milky Way. A lot of the Milky Way photography comes down to processing to bring it out. You've done a good job of doing that. I do like that it's not just sky and horizon. We do have enough detail in here to know what's going on. It has, I know it's probably most likely a wide angle, very wide, super wide, and it's either curvature, distortion, or it kind of has a way of making it look almost like an uneven horizon. So just be careful there. But I think overall you've done a pretty nice job. 13. We can get rid of that square. Yeah, updating your
Sorry, this thing here.
That's okay. Maker's done a nice job. Again, a nice job in conversion is a little muddy, but generally speaking, the the most important part is the waterfall, and it looks nice, it looks soft. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people don't like it. Tonight's your night. I happen to like it. And you've got a nice key line around the outside edge to define the edge of your image, which helps. There's enough detail here and in the rocks and along the back to give it some place. I like the swirl in the bottom. You could have cut it off here, but this adds to the image for sure, the swirly bit on the bottom. It's kind of neat because there's not really scale. I don't have any idea top to bottom how big this is or isn't. It looks larger rather than smaller, but it's a nice image. I don't know if it's an infrared thing, but it does look a little muddy. And by muddy, I mean lacks contrast, especially around the outside edge. But it's a nice soft light that day, so you're not getting burnt. You're almost blowing out highlights, but I can still see texture in there, so you're okay. I'd say 14. That's a nice shot. Taganok? Is that how you say that? I don't know. Well, it won't be too long, right, before we're like this. You've done a pretty good job trying to capture the reflection and including it. To include the reflection, you really do have to kind of split the picture in half with the horizon. In this case, though, you could have cut this big white sky off. You could have cut it off here, right? And you would still have your reflection, and we would have this. Your eye, automatically your eye goes up here, and this down in the front. Whoops, this down in the front. So it is very bright. It's just the day that it is. It's a double-edged sword. You have an overcast day, brings out the nice colors, but it makes for a big gray sky. If you have a big gray sky, do the best you can to not include it. The colors look nice. It looks like you've got the exposure pretty good, but yeah, it could be more like this as opposed to the square that it is. 10. There we go. Wow. That's impressive. You got a nice light, a beautiful background, and it's pretty much sharp everywhere, if not everywhere, right? Nearly everywhere. The fact that the stem falls off, who cares, right? From here down, it doesn't matter. The subject matters. You see all the hair and you see the wings. So you've done a really nice job on this. Would I bring it in and cut this off a bit? I might consider that a bit, but I think you have to look at that. You got a 25% of your image that really isn't doing anything for you. You got nice exposure here. You can see all the detail, and in the whites here. 14. Bald-faced hornet, yeah. So you've done a good job filling the frame with the subject. You didn't cut the flag and the flagpole off, which I can see it would be easy to do because you're so busy looking at this and you go, oh yeah, I'll take the shot and cutting it off here. Filling your frame here and there, and you cut the flagpole off. It adds to the story. Unfortunately, a shot like this is, and not big on the term record shot or snapshot, but it's a recording of an event or a place that you visited, as opposed to trying to make something a little more creative, a little more artsy in nature. Yes, the exposure's pretty good. It's a little bright through here, but you really have to be careful with that because it is, you can tell by the shadow off her hand, it is very bright sunshine almost before or shortly after noon, it looks like. 10. The maker did a nice job on conversion. Your whites, you've held your whites nicely and your blacks are nice and black. The clouds aren't burnt out and the sun isn't burning out. That's about the brightest and a little bit bright up here. Most of the snow, 95% of the snow is held in the highlights. So I think it's good. It does tell a bit of a story with the clouds, and the whole feel of it is like, I don't want to be there, right? But I'm glad somebody was there to take the picture. You're not going to catch me climbing anything like that. You've left enough sky in for effect and balance. I think it looks good, and especially, yes, it's a gray sky, and I just was going on about a gray sky a couple of pictures ago, but you've got some clouds in there breaking it up, so it's much better. If I was to complain, or complain, I guess maybe not the right word. If I was to criticize anything, I'd say your key line is a bit, probably in this case, unnecessary and a little bit heavy, a little thick and a little too bright. So you got to be just, it's really easy to do it wrong and just go a little too far. Now, the next, you could put this in and somebody else could come up and say, wow, that key line sets it off. Beautiful. I just think personally it's a little heavy and a little bright. Still, overall, the content and everything else, a very nice shot. 14. Foreboding weather, yeah.
Honorable mention for Paul Karras.
So we've got an interesting shot. A lot of things, as soon as I saw it, a lot of things started rolling through my mind. Timmy, what is the Christmas Carol or whatever? Timmy's sitting by the fireplace in a wheelchair or whatever. That's the first thing that I thought of when I saw it. Especially you get that very old time feeling, not quite as old as a picture, but generally that feeling. And the broom right there and the shadow. Generally, it's pretty grainy, pretty noisy image. I like the colors and I like the overall feel is nice. There's a lot of floor there that you don't necessarily need. You could lose some floor across here. I don't mind the extra walls up there. It just gives it a greater feeling of emptiness. Again, with the key line, not necessary in this picture, and it is way too thick. The quality issue is doing it a bit for me with the pixelation there. Still, I like the framing. You've done pretty good. I would just lose a bit on the bottom. 11. Lonely, for sure. Erie County Fair. You've done Maker's done a great job composing, not tightening things up too much. There is space where there is enough, about the same amount of space here as there is over here. So it's a nice match. Obviously, it's up in the air. You're going to tip your camera up, and you're not going to have everything else at the fair down below. So it really isolates it against a quite nice sky, especially with this orange down in the bottom, and the very vibrant pinks and purples. It's a really nice job, well done on that, and nice touch with the moon up there. It's just a hugely impactful knock it out of the park type of image. No, but it's definitely above average. I think you've done, with what you're working with, you've done a nice job, you know. Hopefully you did a whole bunch of different things with it, because you can do a lot of stuff. You can, you know, you can use slower shutter speeds and get everybody blurring and smearing and all this kind of stuff, but you chose to freeze it, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with it. I think it's 13. Timing is everything. So generally speaking, the image is overall exposure and focus and everything. That's all good, fine and dandy. The horses are sharp. The riders, you can see the concentration on their face. You get a feel for what's going on. The horses their nostrils are flaring out. The veins are popping out in their neck. They're neck and neck, literally. A great shot. You know, you're looking right in here. There's your biggest part of the story. But you got all these muscles down here, and you got stuff flying around. You've darkened the outside edge to concentrate everything right up in here. It looks, you've done a nice job. Ideally, yeah, it'd be nice to see all of his face too. But I mean, like, that's stupid talk, really. It is what it is. I think you've done a great job under the circumstances. Nice lighting coming through right in here. Yeah, 14. Steeplechase. So we have a really nice scene here with all the cactus and mountains and scrub in the front. You've got a nice looking sky too, with the clouds the way they are, and not a bald sky, either full blue or full gray or whatever. You've got modeling through the clouds. I think my biggest concern would be kind of a mushy blah conversion to black and white. I think it needs more punch, more contrast. I think it would be a much stronger picture, because you had the bones of a good image here, just based on composition and clouds and everything else. And it's just all seems kind of one side or the other of the same shade of mushy gray right through here, which is a shame, because I think this image has great potential. 10. This morning at Letchworth. So we have a lot. Again, a nice job on the framing. Almost necessary, especially on this side, because I know that one rock face there, if you had an awful lot of that in there, it would really be a distraction if that whole thing was showing. But you've hidden it well behind those branches. And you've got some nice clouds up in here to just pull back the sky a bit from being full-blown bluey gray. And you have depth and going down here and around the corner with the fog. So it's kind of a nice, nice effort that way. Is it a high impact image? Well, not really, but it is, again, it's above average, but it is a nice shot and pleasing. And if this was on your living room and you did it, you would hang it on your living room wall and you did it, you would be quite proud of it. 12. This kind of stuff makes me crazy when people stack rocks. I absolutely hate it. Being a nature guy and a guy who I fish down in the gorge and all this stuff, and people come down and they disturb everything to make a stupid little rock stand for what? Actually, the guidelines from the government on our side, when you see them, kick them over, knock them over. They tell you to get rid of them. Anyways, that's just me ranting. That being said, I think you've done a nice job capturing this. You have a decent depth here and back up into the waterfalls. I think you could even have gone with a longer shutter speed and made the water silkier. You could have probably gotten rid, this is pretty bright up here, you could have knocked a little off the top, and you may have wanted to just, because this is your subject obviously, and some of the foreground, this rock is a bit on the bright side, you can pull that down in post. Generally speaking, it's an okay shot. It's something, you're shooting something you came across. I hope you're not the guy that built the rocks, or else I got my foot in my mouth, but that's fine. It is what it is, not first time. As far as impact goes, it's not very impactful. There's not really a lot of wow factor involved, but it's a nice attempt, and you've tried to isolate it from the background with a shallower depth of field, and you've tried to frame it reasonably well. 10. There's not really a sense of scale, but I have a feeling this thing is big. I could be wrong. It could be a kitty size, but it looks like it might be big. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. You've taken a picture of the wagon. You've done a nice job. You've isolated it. It's all, again, with the green foreground and background, it pops out. That's great. It's still, when you're over and done, it's still a picture of a wagon. The exposure is okay, but you are in bright sunlight by the shadow, and these white, this one's okay, this one's a bit on the bright side. It does lack impact, but on the bright side, on the plus side, you've done a nice job framing it. You haven't got it too tight, top or bottom, side to side. It really comes down to subject matter. It's not overly impactful. 10. And yep, wagon. Well, there you go. He was watching you, right? Interesting shot. I just don't know how they can lay in a tree like that. It just looks, to them, it's comfortable because you see lots of pictures of them laying like that, but I don't think I could handle that. So you do have highlights in that in the background, which is expected. You're pointing either across or up, and there's going to be light on the other side of the leaves. Your exposure is nice, and it seems relatively sharp. Again, these leaves down here, in this situation, not a big deal that they're here, but you got to be careful with this stuff. It's easy. You're so busy watching the damn bear that you don't watch the edges and what's going on. So you got to be very careful there. 12. Just hanging, yeah. That's an interesting shot. I do think you've done a nice job. You've handled the exposure very, very well. It doesn't bother me that the sun basically left to right is almost in the center. And you've got these nice reflections off. I don't know if it's stuck in the sand. It almost looks like sand or water, whatever it is. It looks really nice. There is detail on the dark side of everything, so it's nice. I think you've done a really good job. the key line around it is not too heavy and not too thick. Be careful because right here it disappears, so be careful of the color you pick. Along the top edge it just disappears and then comes back over here and it comes in here. It's a complementary color picked out of the scene, but you got to be careful what it's going up against, right? It disappears over here. Just be careful with that. Generally speaking, well seen scene. You found this old stump and made a really nice image out of it. Yeah, 14.
Honorable mention for Sailor Brewer.
Maker did a great job with the composition. Most people would, cut this off, make a square out of it, and have this in the dead center in a bullseye, and it's much more interesting if it's just slightly off center. You've got enough depth of field. Can it always be sharper? Well, yeah, it can always be sharper, but it's sharp where it counts, which is right in this center here and right into here. It fades off, and as the petals go back, they're a little less sharp. Gives you the idea of the roundness of the top of the flower. Even these darker squares up there, they're there and you notice them, but they're not so big and so bright and so overpowering that they're really taking away from anything. The lighting is soft, but you still have lots of, you can see the texture and the variations in the color and the delicate little lines and stuff that are in there. So I think you've done a very nice job there. You're 14. Peach Dahlia.
Honorable mention for Sandy Sylvester.
Well, this image seems to come with its own key line, right? The blue. So I like, I think you've done a nice job here framing and creating, through camera position, you've created nice depth. You got to get the wording right. You got a frame within a frame within a frame, and then, the bars and the frame in the background. So it pulls you in, it draws you right through. It's sharp from here all the way back. It seems to be not quite super sharp right here. We can live with it, but it would be nice if that front edge was sharp. But I think you've done pretty good here. The only suggestion I can make, obviously I don't know where this is or if you had to travel to get it. When you start doing things like this, you can drive, where am I pointing? Right here. See how narrow that is there and how thick it is here? I know it's minor, but it gives you a certain amount of uneasiness just because it's not perfectly square. The rest, it doesn't matter. But the ones that are close to the edge are going to stick out like crazy because you got we know that black edge is straight, and you've got a little bit here, and you got a little bit, and then some here. So you just got to be careful with that. Somebody else might say, yeah, I really don't care if that's not even. So it just depends who's looking at it. I do like the depth though, and I like all the textures. This here, around here, and even the brick wall on the other side going into that. So I think you've done a decent job with the whole thing. 13. Mansfield, 4. Well, that's close. So one of the issues you have when you get this close is your brain does flip-flops for a second until it figures out what it's really looking at, okay? Which probably everybody in the room, oh, okay, it's a close-up of a butterfly. Fine, but for those few seconds, that's what happens. Your depth of field at this range and this magnification it's not 0, but it's really close. And so you got to make sure it's in the right spot. So you can either really take a million shots and make sure that you get one in the right spot and going back and forth and making sure you hit it. This is nice and sharp, this isn't, okay? The eyes, that's a whole other story because you can have them sharp and they don't look sharp because of the facets and everything else. So it doesn't matter if that looks sharp or not, because chances are when you take the picture it may not look sharp. This is fairly sharp, not sharp, but you got a line of sharpness right here just behind there. And the wing can fall off of the back. We know what we're looking at. You just have to be very careful. It's a great attempt, and it's almost to the point of creepy and abstract at this close of a range. But you really have to, I would expect that also to be in focus. Still a nice attempt and nice seeing it. You also got to watch your backgrounds. That's pretty bright compared to everything else. 11. Wow. Can't believe nobody's in swimming, eh? That gives you a certain feeling when you look there. Many things can go through your head as to how and why and what the situation was. That almost looks like rocks with ice, dirty ice on it, like we get around here. But it's not a bad shot, and you've got a nice sky, and you've held exposure in the whites, which is important. And you got a nice, reasonable color of green there. So it's not brown, it's not like chocolate milk. It looks good. Is it hugely impactful? Well, not huge. It's about average. It's a nice scene. There's a certain amount of interest. 11. A very, very interesting looking place. Lots of interesting things going on. Hopefully you also took out your macro and got in close on some of the brickwork and the ironwork and the window framing and close-ups of the decay and bits and pieces there. It's a very interesting looking place. I like the overall feel of it. I think it gives you a certain feel. You can almost smell it, right? You know it's not nice, fresh, clean, lovely spring air when you walk into this room. Probably smells moldy and damp and not terribly pleasant. It gives you evokes a certain feeling, that's for sure. Like the wheelchair picture, you could have something right here, right? A chair, a broken chair, a wagon, a creepy doll, something. The only criticism I would give is, cut it here. This is out of focus, right? I think it would just, in like this where you're looking, it's a details picture. It's an image of details, peeling paint, peeling bricks, cracked windows, dirty windows, all that kind of stuff, junk hanging from the ceiling. I think losing that would improve it, because it is a major chunk right down the side. The lighting is quite nice. Still, overall, it is a nice image. 13. Deserted for sure. Oh, that's cool. That looks like a painting, and that's a compliment. That's not derogatory. By this light here and the reflections down here, you've done a nice job of capturing it. You didn't cut them off. You got this tree doing an arc here, and you got these beautiful trees right up here, and a nice light skimming off the side. You've done a nice job with composition. The picture does pull you in right through to the back edge there, and you've got an interesting sky. This, take it or leave it. I don't think it would matter whether it was there or not. I think, personally, I would prefer it not there. I'd like to see the sky, but that's just me. Nice clean water and a nice reflection. Would it be cool if the reflection was perfect? Well, yeah, but that's just not reality sometimes. But there's enough of a reflection to know what it is and that it looks really nice. This may be considered a bit bright, but you're still holding a bit of detail in there. I think you've done a really nice job on this. 15.
Honorable mention for Richard Brewer.
Well, there's an angry bird. Right. Lots of detail, sharpness. Yeah, the bird is sharp. You've done a nice job with composition here. He's just giving you the crappiest stare down, right? Just hilarious. You're just pissed off that you're standing there looking at him. That's fine. That gives the bird with attitude. It's too bad about this stick right here. You don't see it at first, but when you start looking at it a little more critical, you do see it. Not the end of the world, but it'd be nice. But in a perfect world, that wouldn't be there. The background, even though it's white or near white and bright, it's not the end of the world. In this situation, you've got naked branches, so it's obviously not the middle of summer. So good chance that it's a wintry kind of a scene with the background like that. 14. Yeah, what you're looking at, of course. Well, that looks familiar. So you've got placement in the frame you've done a nice job with, under the arch of the bridge, and you've got a nice sky going on, and focus and exposure seem well handled. There is, weirdly, I don't know what it is. There's a dark circle right there. I don't know why. In the old days, when you sandwich slides in glass, they would get a dark circle until they dried out and they'd pop and it'd be gone. But this is not that. I don't know what that is. Very strange that it's there. I don't know if you were retouching and accidentally put that there without realizing it. I don't know. If it shows up on the next picture, then there's something on your lens in the projector, but it's very odd. You can all see that, right? Yeah, okay, good. It's not just me. I'm not having a stroke or anything. Okay, so back to the image itself. It doesn't have a huge impact. There's only so much interest involved. Yeah, the boat's going down the canal, but there's not a huge evident story. Not that I understand. Yes, yeah, okay, there's a bagpiper up there and a guy in a yellow jacket and two guys in life jackets. Other than that, I can't really pull a story out of this. There's obviously some significance of it, but it's not really readily apparent to me. You captured it well. It's in focus. It's well exposed. If this was their boat and you gave it to them, they'd probably be quite happy with it, minus the dot. So the impact is low, and we've got a dot in the middle. 9. That's kind of neat. So an interesting perspective. I'm assuming you converted all this to black and white. Now it could be just the color of the concrete and everything else and the way it looks. But you know, you want your emphasis up here obviously, so you left that in color and you made this black and white, or that's just the way it appears. I really don't know the location, so I couldn't tell you. It's kind of neat, one world compared to the other world on the other side. Reminds me of The Wizard of Oz when they opened the door for the first color scene and it was all black and white, and they opened the door and it was color in behind. So obviously your attention goes right up to here, but you see this and it's very different with the water cascading down. So there's a certain level of interest. Is it a huge wow impact? Not necessarily, but it is a pretty good, decent impact. And you've handled the exposure up here with the two of them compared to this and compared to that. You've matched it up pretty well. Just wondering if you can cut the bottom off. Just wondering if you remove this off, how it will be. 12.
Honorable mention for Glenn Delata.
You got a really nice reflection there. Doesn't look like it, but he's watching it. He can't make the face the bird did, but he's keeping his eye on you. And bright sunshine, difficult not to get highlights, but you've handled it fairly well. I think you could probably crop some off the top and a little bit off the bottom even, and it'll just focus. You know, you don't need the whole lily pad. You bring it down like this and about there, right? And then this is reflected in your title. This is the word reflection. This is the most interesting part of your scene. This is it. You could lose a bit here, lose a bit there, and lose a bit off the top, and it will just concentrate the image more there, right? Which I think would make a stronger image overall. That being said, it's kind of neat. It's you know, it has a certain appeal. 11.
Honorable mention for John Kleinman.
Whoa. Okay. So while we're on the topic of cropping and framing, I think you've done a nice job on this one. The light, the golden light that you have shining on his eye, and then you get a little bit of the reflection down here, is pretty impressive. You see the wake behind him, so you know he's not just sitting there for your entertainment. He's coming with purpose, it looks like. And he's sharp all from the snoot over the eye and down the back of the head, so it's nice and sharp. Any more water than this and there's no reason to, and the same is down below. So I think you've nailed all that, and you've got the eyeball nice and sharp. Yes, the fear factor part of it is certainly adds impact. It's neat that this part is lit. We know what this is, but this doesn't have to have the light that this does on it. This is the part well, actually the teeth underwater is the part you're most worried about. But this part up here is the most interesting with the eyeball and the vertical pupil. I think you've done a nice job on this. I'd say 14. I've got my eye on you. A lot of stuff staring back at me
Honorable
tonight.
mention for Sally Brewer.
See, a lot of things looking back at me from the screen tonight. The Brewers are knocking it out of the park tonight. I'll collect at the door. This image overall has generally a nice feel. It has to me it almost has the effect. It almost gives you the like it's a bulge. Right, this is the closest to your nose, and that is further away. Very nice light. You've handled the exposure well. You've got good sharpness pretty much all the way through. Obviously, that's much further behind, so that makes sense. I think your key line is killing it a bit, and not in a good way. It really isn't necessary, especially with lime green like that. It's pretty much, it almost appears brighter than any other green in the image. Maybe that one you picked it out of or something like that. It could be non-existent, you don't need it, or much more subtle and thinner. You got to really be careful. But I just like the overall feel. I can imagine standing there and smelling the forest, smelling the moisture, smelling the dampness and the coolness. So it just brings you back to a walk in the woods after the rain kind of thing, without the slipping and falling. It's not your typical kind of competition image, but this again would probably be something nice on your wall. $12. So you have a really nicely timed shot as far as freezing the wings, where the bird is just either coming in for a landing or just getting ready to take off. You know, that could have been hanging down here and been cut off, and it wouldn't nearly have the same effect as this flowing down in the corner. Which affects the overall composition, because now, yeah, you get extra space up here, but it would look stupid if you cut it off here and cut the tail off. And you've got to have it up that high for the flower too. So I think overall you've done it. I think I'd like to see it a little punchier. The bird seems a little, it just looks like it could use a little more contrast, the bird itself. Not a big issue, and not necessarily a game changer, but that would be, so when you're doing this stuff, it's a bit of a sliding scale. As you're in your head, you're going, oh, this is a 13, 14, 15, whatever. As you get up higher, you have to be a little more critical, because you have to, in your mind, decide what's going to make it or break it to the next point level. This isn't going to change much, but just generally speaking, I think that could use a little more punch up in post. It wouldn't take too much to do. The lighting on it is nice. 15. It's a very good example also of a key line that's not disturbing or in the way. Whoever that is, nice job.
Honorable mention for Jennifer Haley Rose.
Nice job with the background, foreground. Softness to in sharp and out of focus. It pops off the background quite nicely. And it does look like you did it in camera, as opposed to the sometimes working Adobe version of background blur. Nearly square format works well with this and your composition. I don't think you could have really come in too much tighter than you have on this side. This is perfect over here. You know, if you want to get really, really picky, maybe in here. But that's again a matter of taste, and it keeps them nice and centered. Again, another thing staring back at me off the screen. The perch is nice. It is the brightest spot here, but it's not blown out. It's not overdone. It's just brighter because it's out from under the bird, and the eyes are nice and sharp. Yeah, that's a really nice image. I think I got to go 15 on that too. Great horned owl.
Honorable mention for Joseph Tomazaro.
Okay. There are people there, but there's not too many people there. You would think there would be more. Again, a nice exposure, handled well. You got good depth. You've got everything going for you. Again, it is it's a nice perspective. You're up looking down on it, so you can cover the whole thing. I'm sure the people who put this on would want a picture of it. As far as the competition goes, it doesn't carry that far. Yes, technically it's a great image. You've got the colors right, you've got the exposure right, you've got the right light where it wasn't too harsh, there's not shadows. You didn't cut this building off up here. You didn't go out and include an old whatever that's on this side. You've kept it right. Very nice image. Exposure is handled extremely well. Maker's done it with intent, meaning you balanced out the shutter speed with the saturation of the sky and everything else to make the whole thing work well together. This, I really love the water coming over here. I think you've handled it well. Could it be blurrier? Maybe. I would like to see that differently just to compare, but that doesn't mean this is right or wrong. This is the way you chose, that it looks good the way it is. You got a nice series of clouds right through here, and your horizon line isn't dead center. Yes, could you cut the sky off? Yeah, but I think it wouldn't have as near as much impact. You need a certain amount of sky there to, especially if you're getting clouds like this, include them, right? You know, again, with the key line, that's fair enough. Be careful, it disappears up here. You know, you could have moved over a smidge and got rid of that. Obviously not a deal breaker, something that tiny. You know, I just love staring in here and seeing all the rocks and the texture and the water falling over and everything else. Very nice. You knocked it out of the park on this one. You did a great job. I'm sure there's a certain amount of pushing saturations and stuff in post, but you haven't done it so far that you've ruined it, which is a very common problem. So yes, way to go, 15. Dairy Basin.
Honorable mention to Janet Pratt.
Yeah, you don't have to travel all over the world to get really nice images. That was beautiful. So the little guy here. You've done a nice job making sure we dial right in on this area here with the eye showing. It would just as easy, I'm sure it would turn in and nuzzle in and come out and in and out and that kind of stuff. You just have to wait and put the time in. You've done a nice job. I'm glad you didn't cut his head off. All this is context for mother and child and that kind of thing with the arms and the thumb there. It's a very, very nice image. The lighting is nice and it's sharp. It's not... people tend to over sharpen some of these things, especially with the fur. It looks terrible when it happens. You got to be really careful. Yeah, its focus has fallen off a bit over here. Not the end of the world. This is really what I'm concerned with: the head, the fist, the ear, and especially the eyes. And they just pop out. They're lighter color. It's the lightest part of the scene, so it really pops out. I think you've done a very nice job here. Another 15. I can't see why not. Mother's embrace.
Honorable mention to Beverly Hills.
Wow, you guys and your hummingbirds, eh? Holy smokes. A very nice shot. Nice creamy, smooth background. Everything's sharp. I find, oh, I'm pulling on something here. There. I just find it's very static. The bird's sitting there. It's not even sticking its tongue out. I know this is probably a very difficult shot to get, just generally speaking. They're not easy to shoot. But this is very static. It's not flying in. The wings aren't out. It's just sitting there. Just sitting there. You know, I know it's an interesting. It's sharp. It's beautiful. All that kind of stuff. But when you get motion or movement or implied motion or implied movement from the feathers or the wings, it just adds interest. Yes, technically it's perfect, no complaints. Impact, it's got way above average impact. But if you were to say what would you like to see in it, what would you change? Well, I'd change maybe the wings out, maybe it wasn't landing, maybe it was feeding and flying, right, or hovering right in there. As recording the species, I don't think you're going to get a better shot for it. But as interest, I think it's just a step below being perfect. So 14. Still a great shot. Ecuadorian hummingbird, U.S. Navy. Yeah. So you've cropped this nicely. You've handled the exposure fairly well. Yes, it's bright. Is that contrails? Is that the right term? The contrails, these things. They are very bright, but they also imply upward motion and movement of the jets. It doesn't appear to be super sharp, as sharp as it could be or should be. But it is neat. It is a unique view. I'm glad there's writing on the bottom of the wings, or it would be a lot less impressive. And you've tightened it up enough. Any tighter, and I think it wouldn't have as much impact. 11. Balloon festival. Love shooting hot air balloons. I think you've done a nice job here, composition-wise. You left that ring without cutting it off. You waited for him to pull and get a blast of the flames up there. And they're just on the edge of, I'm assuming, takeoff. And it's a nice touch having this one in the background. Obviously, you got the two helpers, whatever they're called, working and making sure everything's going fine. And you've done a nice job with the exposure in here. It tells a nice story. And the composition, I think, is nice. 13. Balloons over Letchworth. So a slightly longer than normal exposure of the Peace Bridge. You've got some smearing of the clouds, which is nice. And you've got some of the lights. That might be cars, it might not be, I'm not 100% sure. You got a little bit of motion out there in the water. It's nice. These highlights look really nice on there. And overall, it's a pretty nice scene. It does fall off in focus over here. But it would be nice if it was pin sharp all the way from one end to the other. 13.
Honorable mention for Dan Hurley.
So that was that the Grand Island Bridge or the Peace Bridge? Grand Island Bridge, okay. Shows you how much I come over here. Whoops.
It was actually part of the time lapse.
Okay. Well, here we go. So a great subject, obviously. Not brand new, nice and shiny right off the lot. An interesting interesting technique or whatever you've done in post. Interesting treatment, I guess, is the term I'm looking for. You brought out some of the colors and the textures. You've also given it the foliage, this weird kind of posterized look, and a bus right there. I don't know if this was on our side. There's McLean's up on the other side of. This was at McLean's, yeah. It's a cool place. So yeah, lots of neat stuff there to shoot, and lots of close up, far away, you know, all different kinds of things. I think you've done a nice job here. This is very bright, the front bumper. In something like this, when it's pushed to the side, pushed away from reality, you have to let certain things go. Not the end of the world that this is blown out, and the highlights are kind of flat and blown out, but it's old paint, textureless probably. I think it's a nice job. Is it fantastic? No, but it's above average, it's good, and it's an interesting technique. 12. Yes, rusted. Another hummingbird. So, yes, don't, oh God, as a judge, don't ever compare it to another image, but I'm comparing this one to the last hummingbird. This is what I was talking about. You have the wings out, and you have the implied action or activity happening, as opposed to it sitting on a perch looking at the flower. So the the beak is in the flower, it's feeding. The wings have a tiny bit of motion on them, so you know they're moving anyways, and you've got a nice, you've got a really nice background there. Doesn't always have to be solid green. This blotchy, I call it a blotchy green, looks really nice. It gives depth, it gives reality and a realistic background. And you're using real flowers, and it's a nice job. Yeah, the light's a little on the hard side. There's a hard shadow right up in here. Not the end of the world. You still have mostly texture right in here, so you're okay. A nice image. 14.
Honorable mention for Joseph Temazella.
Well, there you go. That's kind of cool. Look at those eyeballs. Wow. You can see how the colors match the background, and how they can hide, you know, and get so close to their prey when they're hunting and everything else. I just find that part amazing, because they can just sit in the tall grass, they don't move, and they can't be seen, and someone can walk right by, and then they take off. Anyways, that's nature program stuff. So a really interesting shot. Got a piece of something that was having a bad day, got eaten. You got some texture in the wood here, and you've got a nice background that's gives a sense of place, but it's blurry enough that it makes your image, it makes your subject stand out, but there's enough texture to know it doesn't look like a zoo or anything. It looks like you were actually on safari. It was really like that. If I'm going to complain about anything, it's a little bit of this down in front, but not, again, not the end of the world. I like the fact that he's not staring at me, thinking, well, when I'm done with this, you know what, I'd really like a bite of that. So I like that he's looking off to the right, camera right. I like that. I think that adds a lot of interest, and a lot of interest that he's holding a big chunk of something. So very nice shot. Wow. 15 again, very, very nicely done. Take our.
Honorable mention for Beverly Goldsmith.
Well, that's cool. I've seen these kind of shots before, and they're still, I think they're hilarious. I don't know how long it took you to get this, how many birds you went through, how many pixels you shot to get it, but definitely an interesting perspective. Again, a nice smoothed out background, but not so smooth. There's still texture back there. Whether it's some tall grass or whatever, it looks cool. Yes, the feet are out of focus, but I don't care. You got this. You got the shape. You know, obviously they're aerodynamic. They're just coming right at you. And one eye looks partially closed or damaged or something. So it's a cool shot. Could you crop it in a little tighter? Maybe. A little bit less on the top, but I think that's getting too picky. I think it's an interesting perspective. It's a shot you don't see very often, and can only imagine how hard it is to get. Guys are killing me. Uh, 15. I got to go with the 15 for unique, for sure. Chickadee in flight, yeah.
Honorable mention for Eugene Peters.
Some infrared here, looks quite nice, nicely done. The highlights are still held, and you've done a nice, keep the sky that weird blue sky you get with infrared. Whether it's with a converted camera or with a filter. You put on a filter, it's really long exposures, and if you pay to have your camera converted, it's just a different way of doing it. It is a little bright along here in behind the first set of willow trees there, but most of it's hidden. I'm just wondering if you need this muck and scum in the front. You know, I know you're getting some nice reflections there. You probably could get rid of this up to about there. It's not adding. If it's not adding, it's probably taken away. 12.
Honorable mention for Sandy Silvestri.
You've done a nice job hitting your focus, which is usually one of the toughest parts of bird photography, is getting the focus in the right spot. Eyes sharp and all. It seems to be sharp or nearly sharp all the way through. Obviously, this is what you want, sharp, most important part. It's unfortunate about this stick, this branch in here, and the background is just like this wacky, crazy array of twigs everywhere. I think you've done well. I don't think you knocked it out of the park. One of the things that's most impactful of this is just the stark difference in color. You have the beautiful red cardinal, and you have a stark white, gray, wintry background that we get around here that seems like forever, as opposed to a blue sky. So you have, it just pops, right? It's unfortunate about this. But that's reality, is that's what's there. 11.
Honorable mention for Anthony Angelone.
It's an interesting viewpoint. You got the guy working, you got the guy inside, probably issuing orders of some kind, and you got a boat that's made to work, right? I believe it's a tugboat of some kind, and you know, harsh conditions. It's beat up. It's seen a lot. It's got a lot of miles on it, and you got things fading off in focus, so it is standing out. And of course, you got the bright colors, his vest and the pink of the cabin. It does tell a bit of a story. There's a certain amount of impact, and technically, I think you've handled the conditions well. And you've done some work in post to even out everything. 12. So you've got a really nice subject here. And trying to make one stand out from the crowd, you've done a decent job, depth of field wise. This is the one we're looking at. Everything else is out of focus or blurry-er. And so this one's going to stand out most. Unfortunately, it's blending in too much with this one. It almost looks like this is part of the flower, and it's a blurry part of the flower. Another thing is you've gotten, I call it like the bullseye. If you draw a line here to here, you're right dead center. Not a good place to be. You could have had it at least on an angle, or you could have moved camera left, camera right, and separated from this one a bit, and watch these bright spots in the background. You get in close, everything matters. Everything makes a difference. Every little, an inch either way makes a lot of difference. Hopefully you get a chance to do it again. Yes, the lighting is nice and there's lots of detail in here, but composition and your impact, I think, is lacking at both. 10. Well, he looks like he's got to be somewhere quick. I guess he's got to go save somebody's life. I like the fact that she's like, why is this guy running? What, you know, what are you running for? And everybody else is totally oblivious that there's a problem somewhere. So that's actually kind of interesting. And he's just getting there. So I think it's a neat story. I'm glad you didn't cut her off and everything else, and you didn't cut her off at the legs or anything. Obviously he's the main focus, but when you start looking around, he's the one with a keen eye, or saw somebody, or saw something, or heard something. He's heading out, and she's like, oh, what's going on today? It's a nice day. Look at all the kids, blah, blah, blah. And he's taking care of business. Good exposure, so nice framing. You could have cut the bald guy's head off and not even realize it, but you didn't. So the fact that all the people in the frame are all there is a good. I'm assuming you shot it probably on wide and cropped it properly. Definitely tells a story, definitely gets a story across. As a photojournalism shot, I think it's, I would say you've succeeded very well. 13. Help is on the way.
Honorable mention for Jack Norton.
So there you go, peak of the back stroke, right, or whatever they call it. You know, the strain and everything else, and the twisting and everything else. Exposures, all right. It's a little bright here in his pants. The background's blurred out, which is fine. It makes him stand out a little more. I would like to have, it sounds stupid, but it would just complete the picture if you saw the mound and you saw his feet, all of his feet. It just seems like something's missing, right? I know it sounds really picky, and really your image is here, and all the stress and strain he's doing here, but either show less or show it all, right? This looks like you made a mistake when you only show a little bit, half of a foot. Cut them off at the knees, and then you will concentrate more on this, or make sure you include his shoes next time. The same as when you cut somebody's head off, you know, make sure it's intentional so people know you did it on purpose. Generally speaking, it's a nice image, and there's a certain amount of impact because this happens so fast in real life that we don't get to see this. So that's kind of cool. 12. So you've got some milkweed here. A nice exposure. And you've got a nice background here. You got these out of focus, very out of focus highlights, and that's fine. Watch your sensor. You got a couple of sensor spots here. They can be taken out. Click, click, and they're gone. And also, you could probably pull this edge in just a bit. It is well exposed. It is whitish green. They start going green to white, and it is on the bright side, but it is also your main subject. Lots of these leaves, you could have pulled some in this way, but generally speaking, it's nicely done. Not a huge impact, but the detail is there. The focus is right. The exposure is right. 11. You can even see a little web that goes from here up to here and one across there.
Honorable mention for, I can read the name.
I think it was John Kleinman. Does that make sense to anybody? So here's some action with the bird, the cardinal, and I like the reflection. You didn't cut it off. Again, I'm talking cropping. Again, if you overcropped it, you would lose all these water drops, and that's kind of a lot of the interest that's going on. This thing's just going crazy in the water, splashing all over the place, and you've got a nice reflection in the bottom. I think it's an interesting shot. 12. Okay. Fireworks with a plane going through it. Wow. Not really seen that before. Didn't know they did that. Interesting. Nice job on the key line. It definitely is needed in this image. Nice job on the composition. We know there's going to be a bright burst right there, and if that was included in there, it would take away from the fact that this is going on, because this kind of sneaks up on you a bit there. Yes, everything's white and it's all radiating down this way, and then you got these two yellow things, and whoa, hey, there's a plane in there. How'd that get in there? So it's a very interesting shot, something I've not really seen before. It's kind of cool. And you've handled the exposure well, and the composition is good. You're 14. Flying through the fireworks, wow. Well, winter. This is the only time I like winter, when it's up on the screen. You don't want to deal with it in real life. I think you've done a nice job making me or the viewer try to enjoy winter, right? Because it's a beautiful shot, rolling hills, whatever, beautiful sunrise or sunset, and you got nice clouds, and you've got the rays coming out, both top and bottom, under here and up here. And I do like the pano crop. I think it suits it. Yeah, you included lots of sky because it's a beautiful sky. So good for you. It would have really sucked if you cut it off here and we lost this and all the underlighting of the clouds. It really wouldn't have the same effect. And you got nice, a little bit of texture in the snow, a lot more grass than anything, and the snow stuck to the trees. So I think it's a very nice shot. 15. You've done very well with this. Nice.
Honorable mention.
Perched on high. So this is the same type of bird that was coming straight at us. Totally different look, right? Beautiful. It feels like you can reach out and grab it, right? The lighting is nice and soft. You can, big broad light, you can see by the highlight in the eyes. A little bit bright up in here, but it looks pretty good overall. The curly Q, I'm not crazy about this sticking up right near its face. This doesn't bother me in the background, but you got a really nice background up here. I think you got a nice shot overall. 13. Oh, that was the last one. Nice job, everybody. The Brewers, I'll see you guys later.
I think these people.
Excellent.
Thank you.
A lot of nice stuff in there.
What's that? Not a bird, it sucks.
It's tough. I don't do it.
I don't have patience.
Oh, you're welcome. You did great. Good job.
Actually, it was March. Just way of higher elevations down over. We'll talk to you.
Good job there.
My first time.
That was the
20 years. That was the panorama.
the sun, snow.
The snow in there?
Yeah, that was nice. I like that.
Thank you.
You gotta look at it while you put that enough time. You gotta look at it and say, what could you change to make it
Well,
better?
the thing is, I'm going to cut off. Just what I'm trying to show.
That was a panorama was good.
I think I gave you,
Good choice on that.
Yeah, it came out nice, I was pleased.
I think I gave you what you needed.
Well, you did, those rays were all natural, right?
Yes, sir. The only thing I did was, I toned up the